understanding how to use, we use the word relationships here, how to build what I call EQ, emotional intelligence. How to use emotional intelligence over your smartness to get things done. And I think most of the clients who come to me at all levels, going from individual contributor to the first level manager, and as you see them going up the chain of command, you find that they don't let go of that, how smart they are. And it matters how smart you are, but what matters more is, like we heard, I strongly disagree with you. You say that in the meeting, and all of a sudden, the dander goes up, the tenor of the meeting changes. But if instead you say, you know, I have a slightly different view on that, I'd like to share that with you. It's a very different way of saying the same thing. And now you have the dialogue. And what I'm saying here is one thing that I would like to say, is that we must learn how to let go of that I'm the smartest guy in the room, even though you might be. Because that's not what gets you ahead in an organization. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is, as you grow from individual contributor, and I see this pattern, so I'm kind of reciting the patterns I see with the clients, the work that I have done, and how they are, I've been able to help them kind of get past the block that they see. Going from individual contributor to manager is for lack of a better phrase, I would say it's an orthogonal role. People get promoted from individual contributors to managers, and they believe that I was such a good circuit designer, I should continue to do the same as a manager. And when I became a manager, I used to be an analog circuit designer. Everybody who came to me, I redesigned their circuit because I knew how to do it better, right? And I was working 16-hour days, and I thought I was really working hard and doing a great job redesigning everybody's circuit. But the problem you run into is you don't develop what I call the management skill. And this is where the orthogonality comes in. By not knowing, you think you got promoted because you're great at what you do, but if you continue to do that in your new role, that's a fatal flaw. And part of what was said here, 70 to 80% of the people, especially managers, I see a lot of them, people complaining about their managers, they will let go of that. So you must learn how to get to understanding what the functions of a manager are. There are 4 of them: lead, organize, plan, and control, set up controls. Those are the 4 functions of a manager. So if you understand how to get from being very good at what you do, and then put that skill in the background when you master it, and then embrace the 4 functions of management, that's a hard transition for most people. That's the first difficult transition. The second transition occurs, and I have a lot of clients stuck in this transition, is when they go from the director VP to executive position. And the barrier there I find is that going from individual contributor to manager is one transition, but going from this second transition, you must learn how to go from understanding resource management, technology management, to understanding business management, which is a different dimension of it. Understanding competition, understanding outside world, understanding global forces. And unless people are able to make that second transition, you really don't go into the executive ranks. The final thing I would say, and this is also hard for a lot of people, is they grow up being very smart, that's how they get up the ladder, and they think they have all the answers. So in any meeting, a tough issue comes up, they quickly have the answer. And having an answer like that often intimidates a lot of people. And they, instead of responding, they start shutting down. So one of my clients is a VP at one of the fast-growing companies here, and he just wants to go to the next level. He wants to go to the SVP. And his problem is he always has the answer ready in a meeting. I said, go from having the answer ready to asking the right question. And as somebody said, ask the question that makes everybody think. And then you're not intimidating them anymore. So these are some of the things that I've seen as patterns. And once people understand these patterns, they're able to break through to the next level. And this is something consciously you have to coach yourself to learn how to do. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Dilip. So, I guess there are a number of things that you've heard this morning, this evening, but I just want to hit a couple of points that I didn't hear mentioned, right? I thought of these as must-dos. Couple of observations that I think people have either touched upon or have mentioned or have actually not even mentioned today, but I think are critical for those of you making transitions. So I'll hit them without dwelling on them. The first one is, many of you are going to find yourself in a position where you've got to demonstrate that you can make progress when you don't control the resource. It's a really, really key skill to go into an executive level and to go into a senior management role where you don't have direct supervisory control of people, and to still be able to lead a project where they come from another department and you're able to build an internal partnership, as Vivek talked about, and to be able to deliver progress. The second is that EQ is really, really important. What is EQ? It's being aware of yourself, being empathizing with the other people, empathizing with the situation, being able to control both your emotion and other people's emotion. This is a skill that is sorely lacking, particularly, unfortunately, to generalize to people coming from the Asian subcontinent. And the reason is we are operating as individuals in the valley, and we don't fully understand how to relate to the people that you're with. And I'm going to ask a particular question to people that have operated in other parts of the country. It's a far easier job to relate and to get to know them than to actually come to the valley and develop a sense of who they are, sense of family, sense of relationship. It comes very, very hard in the valley. And it's because of the work style, it's work flexibility. There's a lot of issues that go on here, but I'm going to ask the panel to comment on it. The other thing that Vivek talked about is learn, read, learn. You must study the competition. You must study about your company. You must be somebody that has taken the time to understand what's going on in the industry. If you're not current, and I don't mean keeping up with the latest technology trends, I'm talking about the latest positioning trend. I'm talking about the latest marketing trend. I'm talking about the latest acquisitions. I'm talking about the latest way to put your product forward where either an enterprise or a consumer is going to find it interesting. That is really, really important. And come back to the point that Kailash made about balance sheet and Vivek said about P&L. Everybody, every one of us must know how the company makes money. And you've got to constantly think about making more money, even if you're not in a job that's directly associated with making money. And it's really, really important because half the people sail through their corporate life not knowing how the company makes money, particularly true in large companies. Avoid staff jobs. A lot of you will end up being in a role where you're trying to, you can have a staff job once in a while. It's not a bad experience, especially since you want to learn to do number one. But you don't want to be in a staff job all the time. And when somebody like Kailash has taken a company like IBM to India under very daunting circumstances, many of you will think of it like a staff job. There is a lot of elements of relationship building, lot of diplomacy involved, and it's good experience. But you're going to make your name not only with that, but also having had a P&L at some point. And that's what you must all aspire to be. It doesn't have to be the whole division P&L. Doesn't have to be the whole group P&L. It can be a simple line item P&L. If you're doing a particular aspect or an app, make that product successful. The second thing is, all of us should think about our customers. You must look at how the company is working on customer satisfaction, and there is nobody in the company who's not selling. You're selling in your social settings, you're selling in your conferences that you're going to. Never forget that you're always wearing the company hat. It's actually a demand of a company that you're wearing the company hat all the time. It is not a question of taking it off at 5 o'clock when you go home. And it's something that we often forget. It's something that it's not a job. If it's a career, you have to show interest. And if you're having a good day every day, you must know how to further the cause of the company all the time, every time. And accept change. The worst thing that I've seen in people hurting their career is people who are resisting change. It's going to come anyway. There have been so many changes. You take a company like IBM, it's gone through so many changes, and the whole tanker of an IBM has shifted multiple times. That's the unbelievable asset that IBM has had. And it may take more time than a small company takes. However, a change is going to happen. So it's very important to be accepting of that fact. And you would be surprised to see my number one point here. Keep fit. I can tell you a lot of people won't talk about this, but when you're not fit, it absolutely shows up in the way that you end up being perceived by the people that you work with, particularly as people who are working in a society that is often not like you. It's very important that you don't come to the workplace and have all these habits that tend to turn off people. Farhad talked about picking up cigarette butts. I used to have an executive vice president from Brazil. I have hounded him for 2-3 years, and I've talked to his spouse. I've done all these things to get him to give up smoking. That's an extreme case, but you really want to be careful about yourself. And it's because your fitness is a manifestation of how you take care of yourself, and therefore how you care about the job, how you care about your life. It affects all aspects. I'm sure if you look at senior boards of companies, rarely do you find somebody that is completely out of breath at the first sign of having to show stress in a situation, run from meeting to another meeting. You want people that can handle the stress. And jobs are stressful, there's no question about it. Standing up in front of people is stressful. Learn to speak. Speaking, I think, is one of the most important things that somebody can learn. If you're thinking about rising in a company, join Toastmasters, join speaking clubs, learn to speak, train your children to speak. I can't emphasize more the need to follow your passion in that particular area, speaking. And we speak in our mother tongues, but we just don't express ourselves. And one serious distinguishing factor for Asians versus Caucasians is the ability to express one's idea. I've seen many a meeting where somebody walks in with a good idea and cannot express themselves. And you don't get a second chance to do it. You lose interviews like that. You lose debates like that in particular meetings. And lastly, of course, another controversial point, and I'm going to show that I built my career in the East Coast, Silicon Valley and its attitude to dress. So I know we are very casual. I know that people think of anything is quite okay. But let me tell you, take Apple for example. It has really dressed down Fridays. Those are the most dressiest of days. People wear name brand clothes. People wear clothes that you'd be surprised to see them in. Casual doesn't mean sloppy. And I think we tend to mean sloppy when we get casual. And I include myself in it. I'm just saying pay attention to it. And I recommend to you that you dress like your next level of management dresses. It's probably a simple trick to follow. And keep, as Farhad says, he's got a tie in his car. I don't show up at a customer meeting without a tie. Not because I know it's the norm in the valley or whatever to not wear a tie, but I want to keep one. Bish dresses in a tie every day. It doesn't come easy. But that is something that he's just got into the habit of doing. And it's really important that whether you dress in a tie or not, whether you wear jeans or not, whether you wear shirts or not, dress in a way that the company will accept, not in the way that your peers accept. And watch yours 1 level, 2 levels higher. What does your CEO wear? And follow that. That's probably going to hold you very well. And lastly, I think you should all, as somebody, more than one person has talked about, our goal in life is to, is to really protect our boss. When you work for somebody, you're not going to get ahead by whining about him, speaking ill about him or her, and to not do the right thing by them. You really got to anticipate what makes their performance tick. And they don't value an employee more than if that employee is doing something to make them look good in the eyes of their bosses. So please think about this, learn about this, understand, and ask the question. No boss is going to say, I won't tell you what I'm measured by. They're going to tell you these things are very important. Revenue is very important. EBITDA is very important. They're going to tell you the metrics. Customer sats very important. Pay attention to those. So with that, I'm going to turn back to the panel and ask them to comment on something. Particularly, let me start with Kailash. You built your career in Kentucky, if I remember right. At least you made a general manager role in IBM in Kentucky. You built it in all, different parts of IBM. What would you say is the key difference between building a career in a company like IBM, in doing your work in the East Coast, to building your career in the Valley the way you see it today?
I think there are a lot of similarities, probably some differences also. I think I elaborated on the whole set of things. See, what's happening in a large corporation is you have a very highly competitive environment for promotion. Everybody is vying for the next position, and it's worldwide. Multinationals have, you don't have competition just sitting in New York, East Coast, West Coast, it's worldwide. So you are in a very fiercely competitive environment, and you have to get spotted by the people above you for being the one who's in the pecking order, the next person to become the director or vice president, whatever the order happens to be. And for that, you have to show the 120%. A lot of the goodies that we've been serving you are the same. Knowledge, asking questions, being seen as a leader, being sensitive to people, having people want to work for you. I give you a personal anecdote. I used to be kind of rough on people who were not super smart. So in meetings I would be saying things like, so I have a very, the mentor who became one of my mentors, Don Seraphim. God bless him, he's about 85 years old now. We maintain a great relationship. So he called me once, I remember way back 35, 40 years ago, in his office. And he had an office up in New York, that was upstate New York. His office had he was a senior office manager. He also had a private bathroom. That is a very high distinction, that position. So he said, have you seen my office before, Kailash? I said, no. He says, this is my office. I said, oh, great office. He said, by the way, I also have a personal bathroom. I said, oh, that's very impressive, Don. He says, you're going to have this one of these days. I said, I don't know. I don't know whether I want to be a manager. I was not sure, right? The very early kind of thing. He said, no, you're going to get there. But you know something? You're going to have to learn to treat people more positively, more politely. I says, yeah. I said, no, but I do get impatient. He says, but darn it, you want them to work for you. You want them to work for you. So you have to be likable, So you ask the same thing. Everybody has talked in different ways about I don't agree and all that kind of stuff. By the way, that was a major turning point in my life. Talk about change. My entire attitude changed about people on that just one advice from somebody who meant very well to me and built a long, lifelong relationship with him on that score. So anyway, listening skills and all that stuff, all same fundamentals count. I think now, knowledge probably has taken a higher position. Your knowledge base, domain expertise, probably is a little bit more ahead in today's environment, into that race, how you get farther ahead. The technocracy as opposed to meritocracy. Probably that is one shift, if I could touch on it. But the human parameters, analytics, interpersonal skills, ability to ask questions, and be able to speak to a large bunch of people and influence them through your speech, and have the facts and figures and that kind of stuff. So I would say that's the only one thing I would say, that the technocracy probably is ahead in the game today, in storage, you better be on top of the game. You cannot be a senior executive without being on par with your competition, knowing what's happening every week, every month, acquisitions, all that stuff. In our days, that was slow-paced. It was more driving the business forward. All right, so that's...
Thanks, Kailash. I'll add one more thing. I grew up, I worked first for Ford, and then I worked for Digital Equipment. One was 400,000 people, one was 100,000 people. What was different in the East Coast was that there were plenty of opportunities for you to network. There was opportunities for you to meet people at work, to go out for a drink, to go, I mean, I don't even fish, but I've gone out on many a fishing trip just to get to know my peers, just to know the people from other departments. There were a lot of opportunities in the East Coast for you to try to fit in. And remember that I, like many of the others in the panel, we're talking about coming to the US many, many years ago. So when we came to the US, there were not that many Indians around, there were not that many Pakistanis, there were not many Bangladeshis, Sri Lanka, anybody from the Near East, if you like, there were not that many people. So as we tried to fit in, we worked very hard to be accepted. And that meant subordinating our individualism and fitting into the general theme of the company that you were in. And that attitude, I might be wrong, but I certainly feel has gone in the Valley a little bit. And I tell you why it's gone for the Indians. Particularly for people from Near East Asia, if you call it that, from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. You eat Indian food, we see Indian TV, we blend with Indian people, we socialize with Indian people, we do everything with Indian people, Pakistani people, we go to temple with them, Sri Lanka people meet with Sri Lanka people. This is not a good trend in the Valley for long-term leadership for this community, because you are really isolating yourself in a funny kind of way. You're not adapting to the local population. The local population makes you speak. And I'm not discriminating by saying them and us. I'm just saying that we are in Rome. Just do as the Romans do. Learn to talk like them. Learn to understand what makes them tick. Learn football. I know so many people that have come in the last 10 years who don't understand baseball, football, or basketball. This is very strange for me. Now, those of us who came before understood these games, whether we liked them or not, or ice hockey or something. But you've got to have a conversation point. You've got to learn to deal with people as you relate to them in the workplace. So I'm not trying to differentiate our role in a workplace here versus the workplace there, but I am saying that if you don't figure out how to relate to the population, you end up being isolated, and ultimately you end up getting promoted by a number of the people looking at number of the directors and agreeing to promote them. This is not one person promoting you most of the time. There's a committee of people that you got to do. So here's what I suggest. I suggest that all of you make it a point that every week or maximum every 2 weeks, you meet somebody from another department, you meet somebody who's unlike you, and you meet somebody that is not normally in your circle. Learn to relate, learn to understand what they're about, see them, try to develop a social circle that is beyond the usual comfort circle of your home, because it doesn't come easy. In this valley, it's now become very natural to just be among your own kind, and it's not a very good trend to have this like that. This is not true for people from other countries in the rest of the US. It is particularly true of people in the Valley. Let me ask you though.
Okay, I just want to sound a little, not controversial, but a very interesting debate, which I really don't know the right answer, is the distinguishing feature between professional relationship, which we are talking about, and personal friendship. And here's the issue you get into. Because when you cross this very fine line, at least in my case, you've got 8 or 10 guys who you're working with. You invite their kids to come play with your kids, and suddenly one of them is not performing. You got a layoff. You got to choose one of them. What do you do? okay? Because now it's because those kids won't forgive you, your daughter won't forgive you, okay? So the other extreme case, right? And by the way, the company knows if you do it favoritism, right? Which is a sure sign of a problem. So I don't know the right answer. So relationship is good, professional relationship is outstanding, right? But there is a very complex equation to keep it separate from, because you cannot let your professional decision making in any way hamper your personal friendship.
True, true. Thanks, Farhad. So, my next question has to go to all of you, actually. When we first came to the country, there was a phenomenon where I think being a generalist was valued. You wanted to gain as many skills as possible. You worked in a number of departments. You're now in a climate where I've heard people complain that they worked on the right wheel of a car and they don't get into a job because they were looking for the left wheel of a car, and they can't prove that they know that domain or it's transferable. What is your solution to this problem, starting with you, Dilip?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. What I've found, having gone through my own evolution and looking at a lot of clients who come to me who kind of feel stuck at about 35 or so, is there is a pattern, and the pattern that I find is this, that they start their career in earnest and they want to move quickly, so they think one way to move quickly is to do a lot of stuff. And as a result, they don't achieve mastery in any particular topic. And as a result, they become, I would say, for lack of a better way of saying it, somewhat second class. People don't see them as experts, SMEs. And what happens is, once they are on that track, they're growing every year, and all of a sudden they hit like 30, 32, 30, 35, and they say, gosh, I'm not going anywhere. I think I'll do an MBA. And so they go do MBA and they come back and nothing changes for them after the MBA, especially for those who are in high tech. So what my guidance to my clients is, especially in the first phase of their career, 25 to 35, pick a topic and become a master at it. It doesn't matter what it is. Like Steve Jobs talks about calligraphy and how it became important to him when he founded Apple. And it is irrelevant when you look at calligraphy in terms of, as a subject matter. But it doesn't matter what the subject is, but the fact that you achieved mastery in it is what takes you to the next level in your career. And even if you forget what it is, it's the discipline of mastering something that gets you ahead in your career than doing 10 things all mediocre. So that's one guidance. And this guidance I give it to all my clients, even at 40, at 45. I said, master something that you can claim it yours, and it'll never leave you.
Farhad?
I think it's a very difficult question because to grow you want to do different things. So I think that's useful. Mastery is equally good, but when it leads to general management kind of skills, it's okay. But today, especially with hundreds of people applying for any kind of job, with computers doing the first level of search, the closest match, right, is becoming very automated. And so the issue which is running in is that you get eliminated when you should not be at the first step. So for the first step, this match is very important. Fortunately, in the end, if you can get, right, to a higher level in the organization where they can look at your complete picture, I think this problem goes away to some extent. And I think that's why networking, right, which allows you a different way to get into the system, is better. But I think there is a problem here showing up where closer the match, there are a lot more people looking for a job, and you want to get the job more and more close match, especially in the attributes. In fact, very interesting, we were just talking about international companies. You're a Chinese company. You want to put a control system in, right? In fact, we were talking to a networking company, and the guy says, it's a Chinese company, and they said, You can only hire for this job somebody who's left Cisco. And you would say, that's stupid. You know, I mean, but here's the issue. They are trying to put a control system. The Chinese guys got no ability, you know, either to fly or to interview guys for other attributes. They want to make sure you're not asking a friend of yours. So some bureaucrat there, right, sitting, and by the way, this happens in international companies, they will write a set of rules. And the guy says, I don't care, this is what I need. And so a match becomes very important. I can give you hundreds of examples, right, where bureaucrats sitting someplace or an HR person doing some match, right, it does become important.
So my input is that, the subjects have become so deep and complex today, just the amount of information, you really need to have subject matter expertise. Now the issue is that if you get if you're really a good engineer in software or hardware, or if you're a product manager, or if you're a program manager or project manager, you can shift within industries. But you better be really the best at what you can be in terms of that specific subject matter, right? So, and I think that's true. I think companies today absolutely screen for perfect fits because, even though the hiring has been pretty tough, the macro headwinds that we look at looking forward is, it's very uncertain. Anybody can tell you what's happening 12 months from now. I can guarantee you doesn't have a crystal ball because we really don't know. And so I personally believe having subject matter expertise or in your particular area has become increasingly important.
Kailash, any thoughts?
I think just a simple, a lot of it has been spoken. I think this SME, subject matter expertise, and networking combined. I really believe that to land a good position, I've seen that being a major factor. How you network, who knows you for your expertise, for your personality, for your knowledge, that I think combined is probably the best thing you can do for yourself. Build your expertise, also build a good network.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask a couple of people, unusually I'm going to ask a couple of people in the audience to comment on this subject just to see what they think. Vish and Nagesh?
I thoroughly enjoyed actually this. This is very good. It's a kind of refresher and so much wisdom combined. I mean, this is like about 100 plus years of practical experience just in 4 of you, and if we had Murli, it's like 150 then, so. That was lovely. So one comment that, I more like a kind of, I want you guys to actually comment on it, okay, which is the comment on feedback. See, what happens is that most people in corporations or other, we all work with people, but we rarely ask people, say, tell me how I'm doing. And if you are genuine about it, people will tell you exactly how you're doing and how can you improve. So this notion of feedback, could you comment on that, how important that has been for career growth and advancement?
I'll take a shot at it. I'm a very firm believer in getting feedback, and actually I'd like to think about it as 360-degree feedback. It's not just feedback from your boss or your peers, it's also people you interact with, even if it's some special kind of a project. Because people who know you well will generally give you the benefit of the doubt. It's the people you interact with infrequently who will actually try to give you constructive criticism and say, hey, this is kind of a style issue or you didn't approach it. So I think you should be proactive in approaching your HR departments and asking for 360-degree feedback, because you'll be surprised to find that the feedback you'll get will be both good, bad, pros and cons. But ultimately, we are in a continuous improvement model in all of life, my friends. So don't be afraid to get that 360-degree. Even today, as part of the senior management team, we have to give a 360-degree feedback to the CEO, and we are forced to not only talk about the own managers, but people outside that we deal with on a less frequent basis. So be proactive about that, because when you're early in your career, you can make those changes. It's much harder when you get in senior levels to make those kind of dramatic changes.
So I fully agree. I think one of the distinguishing features as you go up in the organization is less people willing to give you feedback. So feedback is a gift, right? And I think you've got to go with that approach. It's very, very important, right? As a CEO, even my boss doesn't give me a feedback. Definitely my peers, there are no peers if you're CEO, and your subordinates are too afraid, or whatever the reason be. So this idea, even if 360, it's the humility with which you accept the feedback. And you have to firmly believe that somebody giving you feedback, no matter what it is, you can train yourself, right? That is really useful, and you should write a letter of thanks so that it is coming. Because without feedback, and some of your engineers, you cannot improve. Feedback mechanism is critical, and the higher you go, the less feedback you receive. And getting the feedback is absolutely essential for growth.
So, I have lived through feedbacks, and I have had nights where I had to read comments from employees about myself. IBM has a culture, it's called opinion survey, every year. Massive survey is done, hundreds of questions, and then they're given free, open space to write. And so if you're, like I was general manager, so starting from my accent, to my hairstyle, to how I walked, and to I was spending too much money on the flowers in the front of the buildings, and I mean, whole bunch of critical stuff. But you have to really humor yourself and face that you're dealing with human sentiments. And not everybody's going to like you, and they're going to give you some very useful inputs also, not all criticism and all that. So in that spirit, I think you should entertain, enjoy, and do something about that feedback. So I'm very much a student of that mechanism. I've benefited from it, and I encourage you to seek it when it's not coming in an automatic process. Ask the people, just like Vic was saying, hey, how do you think I'm doing, Any areas I can improve my performance or my relationship, whatever. Always a good input from peers, from subordinates, from your bosses, customers, whatever have you. That's a very good point, Vic. Vish. Thanks. Nagesh is going to say something.
Yeah.
Nagesh, you're sitting awfully quiet.
I'm going to give the mic. Yeah, go ahead. You finish.
I think that's the feedback point. I think the biggest point I would like to make on feedback is you must learn, you can't control how it's given to you, because the person's way of giving is what you're stuck with. But how you respond to it is extremely important. So if somebody says to you, Dilip, you did a terrible job doing this, my defenses immediately go up. That's the normal human reaction. But if you just take a breath and say, that's very interesting, please tell me more. And pause and listen to it and engage in a dialogue, that's the hardest thing to do for anyone to do. And especially a lot of Indians in this room, we have this notion of perfection. We think we're perfect for some reason. I don't know why that is. Because our parents told us how perfect we were. And we never let go of it. And when I started working in the corporate world, I had this perfection complex. And so when I started getting the feedback, I said, my parents were wrong, I'm not perfect. And so get over it, nobody's perfect. But the point I want to make is good feedback is a gift. Any feedback is a gift if you know how to take it. You must learn how to take it and not put, because once you react to it, the mechanism shuts down. The next feedback will not be as effective and constructive. So just work on it.
I just want to provide a trick I've used very successfully in corporate. So your secretary happens to be, because they mull around, they really get a very good chance to hear, right? And they're connected to all the other secretaries, and there's a whole secretarial global network, right? It's very useful. So, so having this personal secretary who have a very good relation, who can honestly say, even like a speech I give, and she's the one who's showing me, and she'll come and say, we did this wrong here, you did this wrong here. And I thought she was an extremely valuable employee, very smart. So one of the things is you should value the feedback from anybody, which is very important, right? Because, and I'm telling you, she was very, very top notch. And I used her for many years just because of that ability. Her PowerPoint was questionable. And if you can do that, then a lot of leaders have what's called a chief of staff function. Somebody who kind of does a lot of things, and they use the chief of staff function to get feedback. So there are actually, as you go up in the chain, there are methodologies you can actually use to get feedback, because not getting that feedback is actually a problem.
Okay, Nagesh, would you like to make a comment? I heard you have a few words of wisdom for us.
I came to listen and hear, and because when I
Your mic is...
What number?
Mic 2.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Is it on?
Yeah.
said, I came to listen and learn, because when I talk, I don't learn. So, but I'll just keep it very short. First of all, I must compliment the panel. You really covered the whole waterfront, the whole space of what goes on in corporations and how people get promoted, don't get promoted, get stuck, all of those things. And also the comments you made were very good about the group, what is happening here. I think that's very clear. But just apart from all of that, I'll just add some few comments. Somebody said among you that you have to know the people you're working with. It is so important in today's world, when it is so global, major companies that you look at, that I had to work in Israel for 4 years, and I had people from 24 different nationalities. I was the only non-Jew. And I had to learn that what a guy from Ashkenazi Jew said, and what somebody else coming Sephardi Jew said, and coming from Algeria, what he said, what they meant, what they said. You had to learn, and not go and impose on them your American style management. The second thing happened was in Europe, I had responsibility for 10 European countries. What the Belgians said, the Dutch didn't agree with, and how the French liked to have proper lunch. The Germans had a different way of answering you. You have to learn, be in their shoes. And somebody quoted Holt, the coach from Notre Dame. And he was a very perceptive guy, and he brought this in to be in the other person's shoe. I think this is very important if you're managing large numbers of people. So those are some of the experiences, and I thought I'd share with you. But more importantly, I think today, the corporations are providing unique opportunities for internally developing entrepreneurs. And we had a big debate at Harvard when we were in school there, talking about is there such a thing as entrepreneurs within the company. Today it is much more than 50 years ago when I came and joined the large corporation. One of the companies that I work for, they allow 20% of our time to do research in an area that was not assigned to us, to figure out something new. Now Google does that. This was done 50 years ago. So I'm saying, that number of people don't realize opportunities in a large corporation are great. If you join a company that promotes this kind of entrepreneurship within the company, because they need these kinds of people. So people have to understand, and again, don't just grow laterally. There are ways you can do some interesting invention and get on with a new business you create as a result of it. Or you provide a management structure different how it should be, and you could get promoted to run the job. And this is how I got the job in Europe. I wrote the management paper, 30 pages, saying how Europe should be combined into one entity. And the CEO said, you go and do it. So, opportunities are there if you're not just doing the same thing 20 years. So I think it's a wonderful thing that you had this meeting where a number of people can participate and hear the experience of a number of these people.
Thank you, Nagesh. Thank you. We're going to go on with one very difficult question for this panel, but before I do, I want to pick up on something you said. I remember when I was at Digital, one strategy I used was to volunteer for all sorts of things. Anytime there was a project to be done, I volunteered for it. It could be from, developing a marketing campaign, could be from staffing in a conference, could be from standing in a booth for a conference, could be from running United Way. I did things I knew nothing about. But what that did was a lot of the vice presidents got to know me. And that really helps when you're finally deciding what you really want to do. That's another way to get known and to use your network. So I just remembered that when you said it. So I welcome all of you to try that strategy too. I'm going to ask this panel a very difficult question. So all of you have built your career at the early stage. You built it some years ago, I'll be polite, probably yesterday. But If you were to do it today, what would you do different? Kailash?
It goes, look, one of the things that's very interesting to me is I actually learned a lot from listening to all my fellow panelists, because there are some things that it reminds you of. But I think one of the things I would have done different is I had this attitude to answer the question initially, because I thought I knew the answer, and it took me a while to learn to be a better listener. And it took me, I would say, maybe 3-4 years into my career before I said, God, I really need to learn to listen. And I had actually a boss who would listen quietly, and so that was a key learning that says, even if you know the answer, make sure you listen to all the opinions and learn that sense of humility, even though you may be the smartest person in the room. But I think listening is a key gift that doesn't come naturally to most Asians in general, because we love to talk, we love to converse, we love to get together. When you go into any kind of a social setting in an Asian setting, the noise level is so high. That's why I learned a lot from American friends who would lower their voice and you talk nicely versus screaming in a restaurant. So that ability to listen was a key learning that I wish I learned earlier in my career.
I think very similar. I thought, at least for the first, most probably 10 years, this is a long time in history, that being this, when you got promoted, you had to be the best, whatever your group was, right? So my first inclination was, and I actually moved around from finance to engineering to customer service. My first step was, I must become the best at doing it, right? And it was only, maybe out of the first 10 years, you cannot be best and keep growing, right? Your job is how to find the best people and all. So I think, we talked about it, trying to be the smartest person on their subject is a limitation, because it's not humanly possible to be smart, right? In a big area, so it's a self-limiting. So I think that was my biggest learning. Now, the flip side I want to add is very important if you're starting off to have good bosses. And fortunately, by the way, Amdal was formed from IBM. And IBM absolutely trained the people in terms of management. So I was very, very fortunate. So the first 15 to 20 years, 15 years of the bosses I had, direct bosses, they were so phenomenal, right? And I would actually attribute today my success, right, to the training I received from them, because I would have gone in lots of long ways. And the caring, by the way, which is a very distinguishing feature, which I've improved.
So I think I thought about it now. When I came here, 1963, a long time ago, we came with $8. You probably have no idea about that. $8 from India. And I took a haircut at Portland Airport, and I didn't know, I'm not saying, this thing, a 2-day flight. And I thought it would be 25 paisa, 25 cents. At that time, dollar was 5 rupees. So the barber said, I said, how much? He said, $4, 50 cents. And then I said, 8% tip. So my net worth on that day declined by about 70%. But $8, I had only left for $3 by when I landed on my campus. Anyway, the point is that we had a different set of circumstances. Security was important. We left India not knowing failure, not knowing risk. We said, we are going, everything will work out fine. There was no backup plan. I knew nobody in this country. At that time, there were only a few hundred of us came from India. Very few people. I got my green card in about 2 weeks. Things were different. But corporate jobs were a very secure place to be. And IBM was a place where if somebody left IBM, that rumor, that news went across the 400,000 population around the world and say, why did Charlie leave? It was sensational. Charlie has left. Doesn't matter, Charlie may have been a first-time manager. Charlie has left. Why? What was wrong? What went wrong? Whatever. So that kind of a culture. So that's what. So we not, So we never thought about departing from that security and all those stuff, and reasonable compensation packages and all that stuff. But I think knowing all that I know today, and the fact that I was instrumental in creating a large value for IBM through the division I managed and through the incorporation of IBM India and so on and so forth, I did not create personal wealth in the process, anywhere in any proportion to what I contributed. It was a minuscule portion of what I contributed. That I thought was probably not a great idea in hindsight. The fact that, in all modesty, I did have the capacity and ability to pull big things together. So if I had to do it all over again, what I would do is I would say, I would be in Silicon Valley, I would build a team of 2 or 3 people who complement me and judiciously look at the next generation of value opportunity, create a secure financial position for myself. I would not mess with being on the street. So have a secure cushion and then launch on that venture with 2 or 3 other people who are like-minded, complementary to me. So I would definitely do the entrepreneurial route based on who I think I am. I did it later on in different capacities and different ways, but I think that is my true, honest to goodness answer.
Good. Thank you, Kailash. And actually, I can tell you that Vivek and I have shared this earlier, that particularly the vagaries of the market, and having lived a long time in a career in a large corporation, we too suffered from the same thing. So I think the value, we should have come earlier to the value, would be my answer. So I didn't know such a place existed, didn't know there was an opportunity, didn't know till I got here that that was the case. So I'm going to turn this over to questions, because that's really what we want to do. We want to interact with all of you. But before I do that, there are some charter members and some significant people